October 1954, we mastered gravity control.
Who mastered it?
The covert programs in the United States aerospace.
But there was a couple people working on it. There was Lewis Whitten and...
No, I'm talking about if you take T. Townsend Brown's work.
Okay, T. Townsend Brown. Okay.
And the Beefield-Brown effect, all that started in the 20s. And if you look at a film that we released a couple years ago called The Lost Century, it kind of unpacks all this. It's a documentary.
Okay.
And people should look at that. You know, it explains all this and this trajectory of how this evolved. Mm-hmm. And so there were experiments with very high voltage systems that called an electrogravitic effect, where things would lift, right?
Okay.
And that was in the 20s. That was 28, 29. It was replicated in Germany in the Kautsky-Frost experiment. We have a physics journal. We show that in the film.
Okay.
It's in here for the briefing.
Okay.
Now, imagine those early experiments with so-called anti-gravity.
Okay.
Not a good term, but we'll just use the pop culture term. It's actually electrogravitics and electrogravitic field propulsion, but it's not a physics class.
Okay.
So what happened is that that research combined with a augmentation of that research, a big leap forward by studying the extraterrestrial vehicles that we downed in the mid-40s and 50s.
Right.
So by the time those two streams combined into a mighty river of research, but it was covert. As I was referring to that Wilbur Smith document, it's the most secret. And he said, this is the most secret operation in the United States, exceeding the secrecy of the hydrogen bomb research. Now, this is 1950, before we detonated the first hydrogen bomb. So imagine something more classified and secret than the H-bomb, the ultimate doomsday weapon. Mm-hmm. That's this stuff. So, my uncle had his whole career at Northrop Grumman. He worked on the lunar module that landed on the moon. But those big aerospace companies, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Skunk Works, and now Raytheon, EG&G, way back then, and others, they got the portfolio for their special projects to study this material, figure out how it worked, and then apply it.
Yeah.
So by 1954, we had operational gravity control so that we were building our own UFOs. And I always tell people, if you see something you call a UFO or a UAP, you have to ask yourself, it could be one of three things. It could be an extraterrestrial vehicle or NHI craft. It's the pop culture now. It can be a man-made one coming out of one of these big aerospace companies because they've been zipping around since the late 50s.
Right.
Or it could be neither of them, and it could be some extra-dimensional entity, something from another dimension that's not extraterrestrial.
So this
is where it gets confusing for people, and it's deliberately been commingled. In other words, disinformation specialists from the CIA and other places, like Lou Elizondo,
he called you a terrorist.
Yeah, I know. It's very funny. I'm a terrorist for speaking the truth. Well, that's, I mean, as opposed to people who are actually trying to create Armageddon, which would be his crowd.
Yeah.
But the problem is that if you don't have enough of the information, and this information's been in a blackout for 70 years, if you're David Fravor flying an F-18 chasing one of these things, and you're not read in, you're a jet pilot. You're not read into what's coming out of the underground facilities at Skunk Works out there in the desert.
Yeah.
So you're going to immediately think, oh, shit, I just saw an alien craft. No, you saw something that was made at the Skunk Works that was moving in a way with no visible means of propulsion.
I was just trying to clarify earlier on the anti-gravity side of things. Jeremy Riss, alien scientist, who's a physics historian, was explaining to me that there was two main groups. One was Lewis Whitten and the people that he was working on it with, and then Bryce DeWitt, who was working on anti-gravity in like the earlier 50s, like before 54. And he thinks that one of them figured it out, and then I guess from my understanding is that went black all of a sudden.
Yep.
Like they got co-opted by somebody. And then like in 50, I think it was 57, there was like a, what was it? There was some big like anti-gravity conference or something.
Right.
Where they were trying to figure, but why would they have that conference in 57 if they had figured it out in 54? You know what I mean?
Well, because it's compartmented. I mean, the left hand doesn't know the right hand exists. I mean, I've done briefings for the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, 3-star general. And he didn't know anything that's going on with this, even though he made inquiries. He was blown off. So everyone thinks that there's sort of this, you're the president or you're a 3 or 4-star general and you have an all-access pass. You do not. And that is what my big coming of age on this and why I started the Disclosure Project in 1993 was when I briefed the director of the CIA for Bill Clinton. I learned, and it's a 2 or 3 hour meeting. Yeah, R. James Woolsey, who's since flipped on everybody.
How did he find you, by the way?
A friend of his, he had been on the board of a think tank, Pentagon think tank, knew him and was following what we were doing. Okay. And it was mainly because in 1992, here in Pensacola, Florida, near there, we had a CE5 contact team, and we vectored in 4 ET craft. And one of them was on the front page of the Pensacola paper, got picked up by the intelligence community. And before you know it, I had all kinds of spooks knocking on my door. So, everyone who laughs at that, I say, yeah, what you're missing is the main part of the secret, dude. You're missing the big picture totally. You're flat earthers if you think the universe is 3D flat. You're a flat earth society, But anyway, so that got on the radar of this think tank that was looking into the subject under a contract with the Pentagon. And then and the director of that think tank and the CIA director were friends. So once he became director of CIA, he and Clinton and some other people, Webster Hubbell at Justice, were trying to find out about UFOs, and they were being gaslit and lied to or deceived, and they knew it. I mean, Clinton was smart enough to know he was being zoomed. And so they reached out to me to come up and provide the information I had. Now, initially, I will say, if you look in my archive, you'll see the correspondence about this. I thought they were just trying to pick my brain, and there was intel gathering exercise. No. I mean, the director of CIA and the president had been completely denied access, threatened, and told nothing. And I, at that time, look, I'm a 30-something year, mid-30s medical doctor working full-time as ER, like the show or something. Never seen the show. But the truth is that I thought surely they have more information than I do. This is nuts. So, and they were just lying about what the purpose of the meeting was. And they were just trying to gather information from me. But it wasn't. He was shaken, and they really didn't. And that's when I realized that the organization that's running these covert programs is unconstitutional, criminal, and has been since the late 1950s, since Eisenhower kind of lost control of them. He was betrayed. So there has been no proper legal constitutional oversight of any of these operations, and this is dangerous, since at least 1956-7, somewhere in that period.
Yeah.
So,
and that's where Grush came into the picture, and he was tasked to track down some of this lost black budget money, right? And that's when all these whistleblowers started to come out recently.
Well, not really. I mean, that's a recent event.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were more significant events that happened in the 90s that people don't know about or don't talk about. Because Clinton had set up a military team, because they used to call it Team Blue was the regular military. Team Black were these illegal projects. And he set up what's called Team Red to penetrate those covert illegal programs. Most of those, and I know some of these guys, most of those guys were killed or absorbed into Team Black. So some of the whistleblowers just now coming forward, some of the older ones, had been on Team Red. I can't say which ones, but they'll disclose that when they're ready. And they got totally pulled into these illegally run operations. Now, remember, if you're a 18, 20, 25-year-old Delta Force guy or Green Beret, you're not read into the chain of command up above you. You just go, yes, sir, and you're going to do what you're going to do.
Right.
But once they reached a certain level of seniority, they realized they were in an illegal criminal operation, which is when they reached out to me. And they said, one of them said, thank you for what you're doing for those of us stuck on the other side, meaning stuck in this illegal criminal operation, and they want out. So the good thing is there's a momentum happening now. If we can get whistleblower protections through the Congress and an executive order from the president, where there's a whole dam ready to break of folks like that,
Right.
that we have, who will come forward and with the evidence, and this will begin to be solved. It's just the beginning. So that's what we're trying to work on. But it way predates Grush. I met with Mr. Grush when he was still undercover and gave him information, and his bosses were people that were people I had briefed in the SCIF, the Secure Compartment Information Facility. So he came out with what he had done, but he was secondhand. He had not been operational.
Right.
I'm talking about the firsthand operational people. And what's interesting, if you look at the House Oversight Committee hearings, it's all been all these secondhand people. And I told Congressman Burchett and Luna, and said, why don't you subpoena the people that we have? Here's a list of the top 25.
Right.
And these are people, like I just described, who are operational at the Skunk Works. Interestingly, they never call those people to a hearing. I said, don't call me. I'm just the doorway. I'm the opener, right? No. Call these guys. And here's their name. And by the way, here's their DD-214, and here's where they're operational.